It was Halloween night, 2004. The kind of evening that makes even the quietest streets feel alive. Kids laughing, porch lights glowing, the smell of pumpkin candles and candy in the air. In a cozy Napa Valley home on Dorset Street, 3 young women, Leslie and Mazzara, Adriane Michelle Insogna, and Lauren Meanza, handed out candy to trick-or-treaters. They were all in their 20s, close friends and new roommates, building a small sanctuary together in wine country. At 11 p.m., the porch lights went off. The candy bowl was empty. The laughter outside faded. And inside, silence settled, the kind that only comes after a long, happy night. But hours later, that peaceful silence was shattered. Around 2 a.m., the sound of breaking glass echoed through the dark. Then, a scream. And another. Lauren, who slept downstairs, woke in terror. She could hear chaos upstairs, footsteps, a struggle, then a chilling silence. She ran out of the house and hid in the bushes, trembling. Moments later, she heard someone climbing out through a basement window and running away into the night. When she finally found the courage to return, what she saw would haunt her forever. Leslie was lying face down in a pool of blood. Adriane was beside her bed, barely alive. The air was heavy with the metallic scent of blood and fear. Lauren slipped as she tried to call 911, screaming into the phone for help. By the time police arrived, both women were gone. Napa Valley, known for its vineyards, serenity, and charm, had never seen anything like this. Neighbors who had trick-or-treated at that very house just hours before now watched it surrounded by police tape and floodlights. For a town that hadn't seen a double homicide in years, the horror was unimaginable. People who never locked their doors began checking them twice. Parents kept their kids close. One neighbor remembered the girls as the kind you'd invite over for dinner. Sweet, friendly, like family. Now, those same neighbors stood outside, candles in hand, whispering prayers. Detectives found no sign of robbery. Nothing was stolen. The only broken thing was a window, suggesting the killer wasn't a stranger. This was personal. In her first interview, Lauren said softly, "Basically, it was a horror movie." Only this time, it was real. Detectives worked tirelessly. Every friend, co-worker, and ex-boyfriend became a potential suspect. Adriane worked as an assistant engineer at the Napa Sanitation District, ambitious, grounded, loved by her colleagues. Leslie had recently moved from South Carolina, a former beauty queen known for her kindness and radiant energy. Lauren was a former athlete, the glue in the trio's friendship. All 3 were well-liked. None had enemies. Still, police began to dig deeper. Over 1,300 interviews were conducted. 218 DNA samples collected. Yet no matches. No leads. Then, a clue. Outside the house, investigators found Camel Turkish Gold cigarette butts. Unusual, expensive, and distinctive. They publicly announced the detail, hoping someone would recognize the habit. But for months, nothing. The killer seemed to vanish, a ghost in wine country. Nearly a year later, just as the case began to fade from headlines, a man walked into the Napa Police Department. His name was Eric Matthew Koppel. He wasn't a drifter. He wasn't a stranger. He was a friend. Eric was married to Lily Prudhomme, Adriane's close friend and co-worker. Someone who had even attended the victims' funerals. When police ran Eric's DNA, it matched perfectly with the samples from the cigarette butts. In a quiet voice, Eric confessed. He said he'd been resentful and possessive of Lily's friendship with Adriane. He felt excluded, jealous, replaced. And that jealousy festered, until it turned into rage. He claimed he blacked out that night. But the evidence told another story. He had broken the window to enter. He had brutally stabbed both women. And afterward, he burned his clothes to destroy evidence. It wasn't a blackout. It was premeditated. Jealousy is one of the most powerful and dangerous human emotions. Psychologists describe it as the fear of losing something you believe you own. In relationships, it can morph into obsession, into control, into violence. Eric Koppel wasn't a criminal by record, but he was a man consumed by insecurity. He saw his wife's friendship not as a bond to cherish, but as a threat to his control. It's a pattern seen often in cases of intimate violence, the desire to dominate, the inability to tolerate emotional independence. In that sense, this wasn't just a crime of passion, it was a crime of possession. Eric didn't want Lily's love. He wanted ownership of her world. And that meant eliminating anyone who stood in the way. In 2006, Eric Koppel was sentenced to 2 life terms without parole for the murders of Leslie and Adriane. In court, the mothers of the victims spoke through tears. Leslie's mother, Kathy Harrington, refused to seek the death penalty, a choice rooted in forgiveness, not acceptance. She later said, "My daughter's life was taken by someone who lived in fear, jealousy, and smallness. I will not let him take my peace too." The Napa community slowly healed. Lauren moved away, trying to rebuild her life. Lily Koppel, the killer's wife, vanished from public view, burdened by the unimaginable truth that her husband had murdered her closest friend. The house on Dorset Street still stands, but locals say it never felt the same again. What drives a man to destroy everything he loves? Psychologists say jealousy triggers the same areas of the brain as physical pain. It literally hurts to feel replaced. In extreme cases, that pain can override empathy, morality, and logic. Eric's crime wasn't just a murder. It was a mirror held up to the darkest parts of human emotion, our capacity for love twisted into control, for admiration turned into envy, for friendship turned into fury. Halloween became the perfect metaphor, a mask that hides monsters behind familiar faces. The murders of Leslie Mazzara and Adriane Insogna remind us that evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people we trust most. On that Halloween night, jealousy took 2 innocent lives, and destroyed many more in the process. As you think about their story, ask yourself, how well do we really know the people around us? And how far can love bend before it breaks? If you found this story as haunting and thought-provoking as we did, subscribe to Twisted Psyche, where we explore the dark corners of human behavior, the psychology of obsession, and the stories that remind us how fragile the human mind can be. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't the ones wearing masks.